Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 328, entitled What to Do When You Begin to Think That You're Splitting Up with WordPress. It was published on Thursday the 25th of May 2023. My name's Nathan Wrigley and I'll be joined by our interview guest in a few short moments. Before that, a little bit of housekeeping. The first thing to mention is that we are continuing our 6-part mini webinar series with Mark Westgard from WS Form. We're doing that every Wednesday at 3 p.m. UK time. You can find that show live on our page, wpbuilds.com/live. But if you would like to find some calendar links for that, head over to our homepage and scroll down just a little bit. You'll see a little white card, and on there are some buttons that you can press with calendar links to make sure that you don't miss it. We're having a really interesting time. We're getting more and more complex about what WS Form can do. So if you are in the market for a new form solution, please do come check it out. I have a list of those posts that we've done so far on the WP Builds website. Another thing to mention is that we have our deals page, wpbuilds.com/deals. It's a little bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the year, searchable, filterable list of deals. Go check it out. You never know, you might get yourself some money off. And the other thing to mention, if you like what WP Builds are doing, please feel free to share it. I would really appreciate you going into your podcast player of choice and giving us a rating, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or what have you. Write something, I would be most grateful. Also, our subscribe page, wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Over there, you're going to find all of the ways that you can keep up to date with what we do, our Twitter, our Mastodon, YouTube, and so on and so forth. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits, to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by heading to go.me/WP Builds. Once more, go.me/WP Builds, and sincere thanks to GoDaddy Pro for their ongoing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, what have we got on the show for you today? Well, we've got an episode with Arnas Donauskas. He's from Hostinger, and we're here to talk, well, ostensibly, we're talking about what it's like when you split up with WordPress. In all honesty, the title kind of got a bit hijacked, and maybe it's turned out to be a bit of a clickbaity title, because really we get into a whole load of other things. We get into what is it that makes the community work well, what is it that disables people from starting on their WordPress journey, what challenges do new people face, and how are companies like Hostinger trying to make it easier with onboarding wizards and AI goodness to try and make people's first forays into WordPress a little bit easier to manage. It's an interesting chat, and I hope that you enjoy it. I'm joined on the podcast today by Arnas Donauskas. Hello, Arnas.
Hi, Nathan. Glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me today.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Arnas is joining us from Hostinger, actually, which is a company, if you've attended WordCamps, they've been really pulling out all the stops in terms of getting the sponsorships going on over there. I confess, Arnas, that until probably about 16 to 18 months ago, I hadn't really heard of Hostinger. So before we get onto the subject of today's podcast, which is about splitting up with WordPress, I wonder if you wouldn't mind just giving us a bit of background, firstly about you and what you've been doing in the world of tech, whether that was always WordPress or web development or marketing or whatever it may be. But then also, if you could spend a moment telling us about what you do at Hostinger, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So at Hostinger, I've been for a little bit more than 3 years. Throughout these years, I've worked in different positions. My current one is a product owner of a web hosting product itself. And the first position that I worked was a customer support specialist. So I helped directly, with the requests from the clients, their questions, anything that's related to the website or their development or setting it up. And then I moved on to the UX research. So UX research, basically, I try to locate things where clients of ours struggle and how we can improve them to provide them a better flow with our product, so they would be able, to set up their websites with us more easily, and they wouldn't have to worry about, any technical issues with us. And then before moving to the product owner, I became a product associate of the web hosting product itself. And this is where my current journey started. And yeah, I got more accustomed with the product itself, deepened my knowledge with the WordPress. And yeah, that's about it. This is where I currently stand, and that's a small overview of my journey.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of Hostinger itself, though, for those people who haven't heard of it, I mean, there are some fairly big incumbents, names of hosting companies who sort of roll off the tongue. They've been around for decades and decades. Can you just give us a bit of backstory about Hostinger? How long have they been around, and has there been more interest recently in WordPress? Are they sort of, as a company, are you pivoting into the WordPress space in a big way? And if so, when did that journey all begin?
So Hostinger first was officially founded in 2004, and from that point there were a lot of changes. I know myself, I've been in Hostinger for a little bit three more years, but throughout that time, we kept innovating, making new stuff that would bring more efficiency to customers. Not only from the, what we have to offer, but from the hardware part as well. So our, servers would be stable. We ship, and build our parts in the data centers itself. Over those years, we innovated, tried new things, offered new things. And at the start of the podcast, you mentioned that in 18 or 16 months, you never really heard about the Hostinger itself. And I get what you're coming from, because we just recently started participating in the WordCamps itself, and maybe that's where you could have heard about us in the WordPress world itself. And I'm really happy and pleased to say that I was in those first WordCamps where I participated. I was in the name of the Hostinger there, and I could meet all the WordPress people there.
I initially saw Hostinger's booth at WordCamp Europe in Portugal in 2022. So we're coming on to a year or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, it's curious, because all of the major sponsors in this room I've heard of before. I frequent the WordPress space quite a lot, and then their Hostinger was with a really giant booth, one of the bigger ones. And I thought, that's interesting, because I have not heard of them before. So anyway, nice to have you pivot into the WordPress community. The more eyeballs that are on it, the better. And thanks for telling us about Hostinger and your journey with WordPress. Curious little subject that we're going to cover today. And I was really taken by this when you contacted me and we were sort of toing and froing about a subject that you thought would be of interest. You suggested the idea of, what do you do when you're considering splitting up with WordPress, and how do you get your you wrote mojo back, which I thought was quite interesting. And the reason I find this subject so fascinating is I really do think that there are a proportion of people who are using WordPress who are getting a little bit fatigued. I've seen some fairly high-profile people leave the community. If you've been following WordPress for any length of time, quite a few major solo plugin developers have decided to sell their product on and move on to pastures new. I don't know what many of them are doing now, but it's certainly got nothing to do with WordPress. But also, since the advent of Gutenberg in WordPress 5.0, a lot of people have become a little bit disgruntled. They thought maybe that was the wrong direction for the CMS to move in. So let's get into that. What were you thinking when you came up with this subject for me?
So this subject came from, the root cause of it is like, when you first get an idea to build a website, you always think like, be the most comfortable way for me to build it. And I know a lot of people, majority of people would select WordPress based on its functionality, interface of it, the usability of it, scalability. And but there's also a challenge, to build that whole website. And when you think of it from a bigger perspective, you have to cover that many places, and you're a single person that doing it at the start, and you have to cover so many places. And at some point it could get you like frustrating and overwhelming, and you could just like, in terms of motivation, drop out. But I personally had this as well when I was making small projects for my bachelor, for a few friends of mine, and it does get overwhelming. And I just wanted to like share my view, what did help me out in those cases, and how could I keep like a progressive path where I would be able to see the actual results of the work inputted into the site. So I would still get motivated little by little.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite difficult for me now to really understand what the problems for new users to WordPress are, because I'm so familiar with it. I've just spent the last 8 or 9 years just completely obsessing about WordPress, and so I know what all the things are that you need to achieve to get a website out of the door. But I've got to think that if you've got some specific functionality that's outside of core, and let's be honest, most websites these days will definitely have some third-party plugin dropped into them for one reason or another. But I'm guessing that if you are an inexperienced user, the fact that you've got documentation for this plugin over here, you've got documentation for this theme over here, you don't know how to achieve the functionality for this particular thing that you need, and so you're browsing on the internet for possible solutions. Whereas if you were to go with a proprietary solution, something along the lines of Wix or Squarespace, all of that documentation and tutorials and everything kind of live in that one place, and so it's a little bit more straightforward onboarding. So I understand what you mean. WordPress is quite a difficult ask at the beginning.
Yeah, that's totally correct. But like how, from my point of view, how this thing could be approached is like, let's say you have a simple goal, have a website, and to have that website working and like gathering traffic, get more engagement. All of these all goals look like more of a big picture view, but who say that you can't split them into smaller milestones personally for yourself, and you would be achieving them little by little over time, and all of them would contribute to your bigger goal. What I have in mind by this, let's say you have your website up and rolling. Everything is ready. You have like a simple blog site about your hobby. In this case, let's take photography. And what motivates a lot of people is getting traffic to it. So why not making your first milestone is to cover all of your blog website with SEO-friendly tags throughout the website, throughout all of your articles, which is like significantly boost your site when it's appearing online. That gives you a better perspective when you're online and getting more traffic. So splitting into these smaller tasks, when you achieve, you get that, feeling of accomplishment. Yeah, I did this. And then you can monitor your results along the way.
So rather than having the approach that, you want your website to be the Ferrari of websites immediately before you launch it, the approach would be, okay, start with let's just get the wheels on the ground first, and then we can build the rest of the Ferrari around it. So start simple, set yourself some goals, have an idea of the order in which those dominoes need to fall, and then follow that through. So in your case, that may be tagging things, or maybe email marketing, or whatever it is. But that's how you're suggesting you can achieve greatness more realistically, don't expect it to be brilliant and Ferrari from day one.
Yeah. This is like exactly what I have in mind, because like when you think, I'm sure before everyone who creates a website, they do some research online, check similar websites, and when they see a fully working website, let's say a big blog, like a VP beginner, and they would think, one day I would like to have a website like this myself, but it's a really big task. But so what you do in this case, you work little by little and don't get overwhelmed with how much you will have to do by splitting into the smaller tasks. After a certain period of time, you will be able to contribute to your website in the long run and have it steadily growing.
I think it's quite a difficult thing to do, isn't it? Because if you're new to the web space, not just WordPress, but if you really have only been consuming websites for the whole of the previous 10 years and you haven't built anything, just the idea of knowing how to break the website up into different components, is really hard. In other words, do you tackle let's assume, of course, that you've managed at some point to get a website running. You've got WordPress in there. It's vanilla WordPress. It does very basic things, posts and pages, and that's about it. And it's very, very difficult to know what comes next. Like, do you tackle the theme next and, make it look up to date with your brand? You figuring out how to do the colors and to make the headers and the footers look nice? Or do you concentrate on getting the content out there and don't worry too much about what it looks like, because Google doesn't particularly care what it looks like so long as it's performant and there's text all over the place? It's difficult to know, isn't it? In the same way that, if I wandered into a mechanics with my broken car, I wouldn't know which piece to take off to get to the faulty piece. I just wouldn't know what to do. I'd have to spend quite a lot of time learning about it.
True on that part, but it also comes to your personal goals, or let's say commitments, what you want to do with the website. Let's say you have as you mentioned in the previous example, you have a really basic website. It's up and running, it's online, people can view it, but like, what's your next goal with it? So I believe this would have to be decided, by the ones who initially created the website. Perhaps I'm not satisfied how this looks to my eye, and change the design, or goal is to get profit from the website as fast as possible, so you would have some incoming billings from it. So perhaps you would do like some affiliate integration to it with some plugin. So I believe it all depends what's the goal of the website and what are your priorities on this? Because like that, without having priorities and, a clear plan, you could get quite lost and mixed what to do next for yourself and what would be best to, achieve your goal.
I don't know I don't know whether the position that you have on Hostinger allows you to reveal this to me or not, but I'd be fascinated to know, as people are onboarding at your platform, is there quite a lot of drop off? You get people signing up and there's tons of that, but then it looks like 2 months later they stop fiddling with it. There's no more updates. Somebody like me, I don't have access to any of that data. I only know about the things that I do, but obviously working for a hosting company would be relatively easy to see. Yes, loads of people sign up, but only 10, 15, 20, 40, whatever percent actually manage to keep the whole thing going. And if they do give up, is that the fault of WordPress? The fact that it's complicated and difficult to use potentially, and there's not enough documentation out there. So let's talk about that for a minute. Do you see this trend from the hosting side?
Yeah, so it's not a secret that there are a lot of people who are not able, let's say, activate themselves to have their website up and running. But I also believe that this could be taken as a responsibility on the hosting itself, because we as a hosting company provide help to the client as well. In one particular case, it could be the onboarding, but who says that throughout the onboarding, a hosting provider can't assist to like fully create a simple website itself. So I'm working in one of those teams who make some small guidance changes to the client when it comes to creating their website through onboarding. And like one of the more recent changes, not like a really recent, but like a few months ago, we released the plugin that helps clients to edit their most, like edit your first image, upload your first image, add your new page to your first website. It's like an onboarding plugin inside the WordPress admin panel. And with this, we aim to boost those clients' motivation to not drop out of the website's creation.
So do you have that as like a must-use plugin? Is that something which comes with the Hostinger WordPress install? That if you go through the process, submit your credit card details, blah blah blah, all of that, and then get the website going, that's installed and it sort of activates itself when you first log in?
Yeah. So what you basically described is correct. And if clients, let's say not all of them, some of them already experienced with WordPress, they can just one click and deactivate it, either from the WordPress panel or from our control panel.
And how has that been received? Do you have any telemetry about whether people follow that through and use it, or do you find that most people sort of ignore it?
Yeah. So there's always a group of people who are more motivated by those steps, and they tend to complete all of those steps without like further issues. But yeah, there's a part of the people who, let's say, aim to drop out in the middle, but we're trying to guide the clients that those steps would help you to build a basic website and have your content read online or something similar to that.
Yeah, I guess the old adage of you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I suppose there's only so much you can do if you go out of your way to install a plugin which will help you upload your first image and so on and so forth. But then people just dismiss it. It's kind of interesting, actually. I am the kind of user that, so let's say that I've logged into some SaaS service for the first time. If I see an onboarding wizard, I always finish it. There's no way that I'm not finishing that. I just go through every single step because I think to myself, well, I want to get the best out of this. They've got me this far. I might as well keep going until the end. So I would be your perfect user. I would finish that onboarding, but I know certainly that it's not for everybody, is it? They want to figure it out themselves, and when they get the flat pack IKEA furniture, they never look at the manual. They just try to build it and see.
That's a challenge as well.
See what happens. I'm curious though. Aside from the let me go back a step. So what you've just described is a successful install of WordPress. So you've typed in a database name, you've got a username, you've got your account, you've logged into WordPress. Do you at Hostinger do anything prior to getting the website up and running? In other words, do you have like an onboarding wizard inside of Hostinger which will customize the type of site that you'll end up with? So log into Hostinger, say, I want a WordPress site. Here's some options for you. Would you like would you like this kind of theme? Do you have a business orientated website? We'll create some posts and pages for you to get you started. Do you do any of that before the install happens?
You explain all of this, and this is like a upcoming future plans of ours, and it's not yet released to the clients, but it is planned on our public roadmap. And what at Hostinger we will do is that we create our own custom WordPress templates, and throughout the onboarding process, we will allow clients to minorly customize the template, and after the onboarding, they will have a small up and running website with that template.
So that's really interesting, and it seems to be an approach which a lot of the managed WordPress hosting companies are taking, because you are just driving people towards success, or at least a greater chance of success, aren't you? Because for the best will in the world, I was looking on Twitter the other day, and there were a few people saying about how plain the new 2023 default theme is. I don't know if you've spent any time looking at that, but if you install WordPress by default and you open it, it is ultra minimal. The theme is very powerful. There's lots of features in there. It's block-based, and you can alter the navigation and headers and footers and in the site editing interface and all of that. But what you get when you first begin is very, very minimal indeed. It's there's a heading, there's a few lines, there's a little comment. It's one of the most bare bones themes that I've seen in ages, and being confronted with that as an end user probably is a bit off-putting if you've never used WordPress before. So I do like the idea of being taken through a wizard prior to doing that. And I wonder if we could go into that a little bit more. What kind of, and I know you said it's not yet available for customers, but what kind of questions are you asking to give a little bit more insight into what you're going to install for them?
When you create a post, let's say, or a text, we will help clients to fill out their description with a little help of AI.
Oh, nice.
It's also an upcoming feature, and all of this will be coming, simultaneously one after another. So it's just a little bit sneak peek. So the ideal goal is here, like clients will enter a description, their title, not the title, it would be the brand. So it will go as identification for the website. And what we will use the description as basically the AI, we will generate the content of the website. So let's say I'm a Arthur, I'm a photographer, I make pictures of animals and so on. And at first we will generate the text with the AI, and we will place it in the website, and then we will iterate or gather feedback from the clients. And if the iterations, we will also like to add images based on the text. So client in the end would get a site with ready template, ready text, so they would be able to either customize based on their needs if they find something not up to their likeliness, or they could just go with the already finalized product and go live with it. So that's the idea.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think there's this notion of writer's block where you're trying to write a book, but you're staring at a white piece of paper, and for reasons unknown, you just can't get yourself going. There's the ideas don't go. Occasionally you might sit down and write for ages, and it just all flows perfectly. But I think building a website, especially for non-technical people who've never used WordPress before, the idea of having a bunch of blank pages and not knowing where to start, that's really interesting. So if you're going to fill them out, and I'm guessing, the chances of you actually using that text are fairly small, but at least it gives you some starting point. Oh, okay, this is my about page, and there's some text which is at least text. It's not lorem, and okay, there's where a picture might go, and I can fiddle with the blocks and move it around. And if you're doing that for different kinds of statements, so let's, for example, say that I'm a plumber and I get plumbing text and plumbing pictures, or if I'm a car salesman and I get car salesman text and car salesman pictures, that seems like a really useful implementation of AI. I've got to say, I have my reservations about AI in the way that I hope it doesn't replace all sorts of useful jobs, but that does seem like a genuinely practical application of it. You're just putting something in there to get people started that they can delete and overwrite as they choose.
Yeah, like right now at a hosting layer, we do already have AI implemented in our builder, but I'm like, it's fairly understandable that not all of the clients would like to use builders and they prefer WordPress, but the idea is like really similar. Create a basic template that would give at least a view that client would be able to edit, because like as you mentioned earlier, it's really difficult to start when you just only see a blank page and you say to yourself, okay, what's the next step? Do I import a blog post? Do I write something up? And when all of that will be pre-filled, at least with some text up to your already entered description and some images placed up, you will know that here I can change the image if I would like to, or else change the description if I need to.
Does your little wizard, you mentioned the wizard that guides you through the process, the plugin that you install, which helps people to get through. Is that something that kind of keeps coming back to you? In other words, if you've been, if you dismiss it and say, okay, enough, does it come back and say in like a week's time, look, how are you doing? Is there any help that we can give you? And do you have documentation on your side to assist with this whole thing? Like, okay, you're 2 weeks into your website, let's have a check-in, let's see how we're doing. You may do that with humans rather than documentation. It may be that people reach out to you via email sequences or whatever and try to keep that motivation going. I don't know how you do it.
So like right now, directly through the WordPress admin panel, the plugin itself does not ping the person. Let's say if you have been inactive, but we're planning, to release in our control panel. We have a section that's called like tips to improve, and that tips to improve section will basically tell the clients what's up with their website. If they have let's say WordPress vulnerability with plugin or theme, we immediately inform them. And in that section, we're creating a new tip that will inform the clients like, hey, we see some of the changes that could be done to your website. And if you're up to it, you can directly jump to the WordPress and make those changes. Or if you're not up to it, you can just dismiss that notification.
It's kind of interesting because everything that we've mentioned so far has been a problem. In other words, I can't get this to work, so I need some help with that. Or, you haven't done this yet, so go ahead and do it. Make a post, put some images in, and what have you. I'm just wondering if you do the flip side of things. Is there any information that you provide to say, pat on the back, you've done really well. You've had 300 views in the last couple of days. That's really good. Let's see if we can get it to 600. In other words, is congratulations and backslapping and clapping part of this whole process for keeping the motivation going, or is it all about, no, you're doing this wrong?
That's a good aspect. So we do have so this pat on the back and congratulation emails does come from the perspective. So the client will see it on their cell phone that something good has happened. And I know that at first it all starts like, hey, you added your domain, congratulations, you can start building your website. And then we have an upcoming milestone emails. They're called they're called milestone. And the milestone emails will be sent to the clients when they reach certain milestone. Let's say, and as an example, hey, congratulations, during past 7 days, you had 10 unique visitors visiting your website. Good job with the traffic. Keep it up.
It's kind of interesting because I'd really enjoy getting those, because that would help me get an understanding that you can't run before you can walk. 10 visitors is better than 2 visitors, but I'm guessing there's an expectation that I'll put my website up and 1,000 people will come within the next 5 minutes because it's the internet and everybody's on the internet. So the idea of doing that is interesting, and I'm wondering if, let's say, for example, so just thinking about hosting or the bigger picture, if you detect that a website is stagnant, or the opposite, if a website is doing really well, do you kind of get in touch with those customers in any way to sort of say, look, we've noticed that you really are nailing it. You're getting 50,000 views a month. This is good, but now we need to take care of the hosting from a different point of view. You're on this plan. We probably need to upgrade you to this plan. And the flip side of that, it's not going so well. Can we help? Is there anything that we can do? I don't know how hands-on you are. I'm guessing some people wouldn't like that, but some people would.
So both sides have some sort of a communication. So let's say the website is stagnant and there's not a lot of things going on with it. So we do know from the feedback how the websites are being created, that our website builder could be a good alternative for people who are really beginners and would like to have a simple website. So for the clients, let's say you're a user and for past 3 days, you haven't published a website, and perhaps there are some places you're struggling with. So we will offer you, perhaps you would like to try out the builder. You can just select the template and have the website online. So this is one of the side that you've mentioned. And there's another side for, let's say, a really good performing client, and they are on the hosting plan. But we don't bug the client if they don't actually need that information. What I have in mind with that, let's say you're a well-performing client, you have a good hosting plan, a good amount of traffic, but we will not inform you to, let's say, you need to switch to this hosting plan because you have this amount of traffic. If your hosting plan can handle this, we're really happy that you're using it and it can maintain your website that you currently have, and you don't need to make an upgrade. But we will inform, let you know that, hey, the website has started to use 90 to 100 of your hosting resource plans. It would be good, to review its performance. Perhaps some outdated plugins is causing, the higher usage, or some database requests are piling up, and Object Cache could solve that issue. Or if it's really just the heavily increased usage, maybe you should consider an upgrade to a higher tier plan. But if nothing is out of the ordinary, clients don't get promotional emails do the upgrade or something like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the hosting industry really has changed, doesn't it? In the last, let's go quite far back, last decade. If I was to be having this conversation with a hosting company a decade ago, I mean, basically they did hosting. That was pretty much it. You'd chuck your files over there and that was all you'd do. Whereas the boundary between, the suite of plugins that a hosting company might bring to bear. So you've got your plugin which assists you in the onboarding. A lot of other companies in the hosting space, they've gone out there and they've bought up swathes of different types of, let's say, WooCommerce plugins or calendar type plugins, and now they're able to offer these different types of websites. So we specialize in e-commerce, or we specialize in LMSs, or we specialize in whatever it may be. So the hosting company really does have much more to do, it feels like now. And what you're describing there with the hosting company monitoring and keeping an eye on things and giving you a pat on the back if you're doing well, that's all part of that. Is that whole bigger picture part of Hostinger's plan? Do they want to grow and have more fingers in the WordPress pie, so offering additional plugins, doing everything through your interface, all of that?
Well, I always think from that perspective. Let's say you're creating a website and you have a suggestions of the plugins that could benefit to your website, but do we always have to push something to the clients that they necessarily would need for their website, right? Let's say promoting some kind of a plugins just for clients to have it. I always think that users would really find use of it to install their plugin on the website, so it bring benefit to them. And when it comes to creating perhaps you could specify that question for me when you mentioned that the hosting company contributes to different types of websites. What do you actually have in mind with that?
Yeah, so for example, there are other hosting companies out there who have bought up a ton of different, similar plugins, if you know what I mean. They've got a ton of WooCommerce options, so you can install a WooCommerce optimized website. Plus, because they're now the owners of a whole load of plugins in the WooCommerce space, they can bring that in as well. So they're not just hosting anymore; they're hosting plus, if you like. They've got the hosting, but they've also got things that can make your site more WooCommerce or more LMS or more whatever it may be. Does that make more sense?
Okay, yeah, got it. And I think I understood the question here. So that is, it's like partially true, but it also is it really good to have that many plugins installed on your WordPress website itself? Where I'm leading to here is that what I really like about Hostinger, not like bragging or something like that, but the thinking on this is like, we do create a lot of our products and things that would benefit to the client. Let's say object cache feature. We didn't use bought any plugin. We just build that feature ourselves. And like now, the WordPress users are able to use the object cache feature for their website to speed it up. Let's say another example, like a CDN, you're looking for a better performance, the CDN will help you out. But then again, to set it up, some of the providers do request you to do some additional steps, while on the Hostinger, it's an in-house built solution. So I'm always thinking, like, when it comes to plugins that build up the website's functionality, is it always the best option to just offer that installation to the client and give the plugin directly to it? Or perhaps the hosting itself can build some kind of a solution that the client wouldn't necessarily have to install an additional plugin to that website. Because just one final thought, because where it would all lead, that some kind of a functionality would depend on that plugin.
Yeah, it's interesting. The sort of coalescing of lots and lots of plugins under the auspices of a few big companies has been the story, really, of the last 3 or 4 years in WordPress. You know, you've got some big companies who've bought up a whole swathe of different things, and you know, their claim, I think justifiably, is that they are making it so that you just have everything in one place, which is really easy to use and all of that. But there's been a little bit of pushback in the WordPress community against that, which it feels like you're more on that side of the argument at Hostinger, if you've represented that, or I've understood that correctly, in that that's not the enterprise that you're interested in. You know, you can bring your own plugins and figure it out for yourself, which kind of makes sense. But yeah, there's been quite a lot of concern about that. Just the idea that this free open source project is now becoming swamped by a few big companies and all of the things that leads to.
Yeah, it's not like that I'm against, the whole plugins idea, and that there are like definitely a lot of good plugins that do benefit for the client, for the website, for its development. But I always think, like, won't I have too many plugins on my website that it would potentially like conflict between each other, or make my website more heavily because, new plugin, new processes, new actions in the background. And right now, since I'm working as a product owner in the hosting company, I'm always thinking perhaps that if a high variety of clients are using that feature that is covered by a plugin, perhaps we somehow could assist them and do them like directly from our services side, and clients wouldn't have to install an additional plugin.
Yeah, it's a difficult tightrope to tread, isn't it? Because obviously the more that you can offer, the better it is. There's no doubt about that. But from the community side, I think there's often some pushback. Do we have to have just a few companies who are maintaining ownership of all the things which are good in the WordPress? Well, not all the things, but quite a lot of the things which have historically proven themselves to be good in the WordPress space. Yeah, so interesting to get your thoughts on that. We're kind of running out of time, Arnas. I know that we've kind of barely scratched this subject. I'm just wondering, before we wrap it up, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we missed there?
I think, Nathan, from our topic, we covered all of the main aspects.
This is perfect, in which case we'll knock it on the head. But before we do, Arnas, from Hostinger, where are the best places for us to find you? Could be social, could be an email address, could just be a contact form, whatever works for you.
my best approach to contact me would be my LinkedIn account, I believe. It's my name and the surname, Arnas Donauskas. And this would be the point of contact.
Okay, in which case I will add that to the show notes and make sure that people get to you. Arnas, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on and talking to us about, how to get your website over the finish line, but also what Hostinger are doing to make that happen. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan, for having me today.
Well, I hope that you enjoy the podcast. Forgive the clickbaity title. Hopefully, Arnas and I chatting didn't upset you too much. We did get a little bit off piece. The intention was to talk about what the title was, and then we went off the rails a little bit and talked about all sorts of other things. If you've got any comments about that episode, please feel free to reach out. Go to the wpbuilds.com website and look for episode number 328 and leave us a comment there. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. And we do thank GoDaddy Pro for their support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, hopefully we'll see you at some point this week. We do our This Week in WordPress show live every Monday. We're also doing our Wednesday WS Form webinar that I talked about at the start. And we'll also have a podcast episode, a chat with David Wormsley and I on Thursday. The live shows can be found at wpbuilds.com/live. Hopefully we'll see you at some point this week. But if not, have a good week. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now.